like to hear a motion to reconvene into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Order of business.
Looks fine to me.
All right, we're going to public appearances. Okay. All right, we'll move on. Consent agenda. Yes.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Recognitions.
We don't have any this evening. Normally recognize students and faculty. I think after summer school wraps up, we'll have some next month.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have them, we just don't know who they are.
There we go.
Okay, moving along to correspondence and announcements.
Susan Manny was kind enough to write up a short report from the foundation. We didn't have agendized as a board report. They just met last night, so we put it under correspondence just so everyone could have a copy of the written report. So
That's nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Brought that. Basically, the Monona Education Foundation met and sorry, I don't have the
You don't,
computer.
it's right here, so you don't
It's on
have
board
to.
docs.
Yeah, we
Oh,
don't
it's
have
on
to.
yeah,
board
we'll post it on board
Got it,
docs,
We
so-
read it, so you don't have
Got it.
to say anything.
Great.
Thanks.
That's
That's
Joyce,
nice.
you're just
Nice summary.
too incredibly. But they met yesterday afternoon and they talked about the celebration, and that's going to be November 2nd. So if board members can go, it's really important that we support that initiative. So we're going to do that. They're still doing a lot of work on that. So we'll just have to see how that comes out. The other thing, and Dan, are you gonna, you gave a superintendent report and provided
Yeah.
them with some information. Are you gonna talk
Yeah, when we
about
get to
that
our
tonight?
facilities.
Okay,
Sure.
so we won't say anything about that. And then they want to do a project called, is it Play It Forward?
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
Pay It Forward. And it's very similar to the Oregon School District, and it's to help meet the needs of the children. They talk about clothing and food. And they sound very committed to wanting to do this. So we'll have to see how that comes. Do you want to speak to that, Dan, just because it's important?
Yeah.
You talked about interfacing the school district in a really
Yeah, sure.
solid way.
So the idea, came up a couple of meetings ago with the foundation. Obviously, their main focus has been the innovation grants, and then you're looking at there's perhaps some other needs of particularly for needy families and students. So they, as Susan mentioned, they looked at a program that Oregon has, and so it was a really nice discussion. And what obviously where we left it was, well, we need to really determine exactly what are our needs. There may not be the same as the Oregon School District, and so I had suggested that before we even go out and survey staff, let's talk first of all to the staff that would know, talk to our social workers, counselors, student services staff, and get an idea of what types of things there might be a need, for the foundation support, and then we can go from there. But certainly well intended, and as I said to him, I'm sure there are needs, but let's focus on the area that we really think that we could use support, or our families or our students could, and that and something that's sustainable as well.
And then the other thing that I was just going to mention is that I had received some interaction from, for me, several parents about the Advanced Learner Program and how that program is implemented and meets the needs of the children who appear to qualify based on scores, simple things that you can see. And I encouraged those parents with Dan's help, to come and have conversations with Dan, which the two have done that. Okay.
All right, that's it. Okay,
Do we have a request for public appearance? So I don't know if the board doesn't object to returning to item F to allow one public appearance.
It's fine with me.
and it's not gonna, Beth Esser would not like to speak.
Oh, just register?
Oh, just
Yes.
register.
Oh,
Just
okay.
start the
Never mind.
registration.
Okay, okay.
But she is in favor of the formation of sustainability
Okay.
committee in the district. That was it.
And I guess under
Indeed.
acknowledgements, I also wanted to mention that one of the students that came and spoke in support of sustainability was one of the leaders during the flooding on the islands in terms of running the sandbagging control. And so again, a great student leader from the high school. Incredible.
All right, superintendent's report.
Okay, so I have two items that normally Jared would report out on, but as I mentioned, he's not with us tonight. He's attending the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission on behalf of the district. So the first item, July 1 state equalization aid estimate, and I think the statements kind of speak for themselves, but so the estimate we received on July 1 is for an increase of about 5.45% in state aid. So in meeting with Jared to review this, he wanted me to really emphasize, first of all, this is an estimate that will change, hopefully not substantially, but we'll get the actual numbers not until the beginning of October. But the other thing that's really important is this is a good number. And so if we get that sort of an increase or anywhere close to it, it does not give us any more revenue. What it does basically do is provide tax relief. And certainly following referendum, any kind of additional aid to help, offset property taxes is certainly welcome. So if there's questions, and certainly when Jared gets into the final budget in the fall, he'll have a detailed report exactly not only what the actual aid is, but how it's computed and why we might be getting an increase larger than perhaps some other districts, based on the formula. So all in all, good news. The second piece with regard to the state budget, again, you probably saw in the news media and plus some of the other releases from WSB and so on. Also good news that we were projecting our preliminary budget based upon what Joint Finance had proposed to the governor, and then the governor's, through his veto, as you may be aware, was able to increase our per pupil aid amount from $679 to $742 would be our increase. And so that is an increase of almost $200,000. That is actual revenue increase, so that's certainly welcome. Again, Jared asked me to really caution the board to remember that in a $40 million budget, that $200,000 is certainly not, it's a lot of money, but there's a lot of other areas that are really in fluctuation. Certainly a key piece with the revenue limit is what our third Friday count is for enrollment. Fluctuation of 5 or 10 students can have a pretty dramatic impact as well, on revenues. So, but all in all, very good news. And you may recall that we have our annual meeting a little bit earlier this year than it had in previous years in September. And so Jared will have a very detailed update then. And if you have any questions, either that you bring up tonight or following tonight's meeting, Jared certainly can report out at next month's board meeting as well. So,
Questions, anything? Okay, moving right along. Board reports. Susan Fox.
Okay. The Personnel Committee actually sat 3 meetings because I was gone from the board meeting after the one on May 28th. And that one, we went through about 9 items that had been on the table for several months and took action on most of them. So some of them are coming up tonight for discussion, possible approval. And a couple of new concerns were, new concern was raised there about subs, and that's a recurring thing and a lot of issues. So we're realizing that we really need to think about trying to find ways to increase the sub pay. Just to, we have times we can't find, we literally don't have people to sub, and it's creating problems in the schools, needless to say. And our sub pay is pretty comparable to everybody else in Dade County, so if we can boost it a little, maybe that would help. Everybody's facing shortages, but It sounded like it was a more difficult situation this year. And then on the 19th, we actually have exchanged packages with, officially started bargaining with MGEA. But we haven't really met to bargain yet because we're still doing some other things, but we exchanged packages. And then on the 25th, we did resolve a few, or came up with some recommendations on a few other items. Those are the ones that are actually on the agenda for tonight. So we've kind of dealt with a lot of the things that have been hanging on for a long time in the last year, and hopefully we can start moving on to some new things, looking at tweaking the compensation plan, that kind of thing. So, any questions? Our next meeting is next week, Thursday, the 18th at 1:30.
Any questions? Susan Mann?
As a new chair of policy, I mean, if you take a look at what's on our agenda tonight, it about blows your mind. So we met on June 19th. We continued to consider the Neola School Safety Special Update, all the policies that related to safety. At that meeting, we reviewed 8 policy updates and approved 8. And then we also reviewed several others, including the policy on committees, and have referred that to for further review. And we will be, the 8 that we approved at that meeting those are all coming forward tonight for first read. In addition to the ones that we did in April, 22nd
Yeah,
of
that's
April.
why you have so many.
Okay, possible action items. First one, annual declaration of parent notice of district student academic standards that will be in effect for the 2019-2020 school year pursuant to section 120.12, 13 and section 118.30, 1GA of the state statutes. Yes.
I move pursuant to section 120.12, paren 13, paren B of the state statutes to approve the list and description of the student academic standards in the areas of mathematics, science, reading and writing, geography, and history that shall be in effect for the 2019-20 school year, as said list has been presented in written form as attachment A with the date of July 10, 2019 in the board's packet of supplemental materials for this meeting, and with said academic standards constituting the board-adopted standards that are required under section 118.30, paren 1G, paren A of the state statutes. And I move to direct the administration to incorporate the board-approved list and description of the student academic standards that shall be in effect for the 2019-20 school year into a notice for parents and guardians that the administration shall provide in a manner that is consistent with the requirements of section 120.12, paren 13 of the state statutes.
Those are 2 separate motions, we have to approve them separately, right?
No, it's one action, right?
It's one
Suzanne?
action.
I'm doing. Maybe
Well, you moved, you said I moved twice, you said I moved twice.
Well, right, I guess they are 2 separate motions, so we
That's
could
right.
approve the first one and then the
So
second.
I would second the first one.
Okay.
Okay. And who would
And
like
I would
to?
second the second one, or do you want
Well,
to?
no,
Well, let's just do the first one, then we- yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking we could do it
Yeah.
one vote,
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So,
It's been moved and seconded,
It's been moved
discussion.
and
So we can vote.
discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we'll go to the
So
second
we have to
one.
read the second one again?
No,
No.
I'll second the second.
Okay.
Any
I thought we could
discussion?
do one vote.
No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next year, maybe we can put this a resolution, so you guys say approved resolution as
Yeah.
presented.
All right.
It's okay, it's good for the public to know we have to do that.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
Use of an expulsion hearing officer for 2019-2020. Someone like to make a
I
motion?
move approval of the resolution to authorize the appointment of an expulsion hearing officer for the 2019-2020 school year as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Well, I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
Wait. Yes, go ahead.
That's-
I was saying wait about the vote, but you
Oh,
said.
yeah. Is this any different than what we currently are doing?
No, so this is just saying, if we have a need to go to an expulsion hearing, the board is authorizing using a hearing officer in lieu of the board hearing.
Okay.
And we have to always approve this after July 1st.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Lease agreement with American Capital Financial Services, Inc.
Okay, so this is a standard lease agreement that we have in the past utilized, very similar with regard to our technology. So Jared wrote the executive summary. Several years ago, we had gradually tried to add Chromebooks and iPads, and then a couple years ago, we finally were able to get to the point that we truly were one-to-one with the Chromebooks in grade 3 through 12, and we were 1-to-2 with iPads. For next year, we want to move 1-to-1 with iPads as well in grades K-2, and that's something that's gone through our technology committees and through the schools. And so, in order to do that, instead of buying outright to spread out the payments, we'd like to do a lease. Because of the cost of the lease, it requires board approval. But we've generally used leases for our major technology purchases in the past, as opposed to buying outright.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the lease agreement with American Capital Financial Service, Inc. as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 2019-2020 revised open enrollment recommendations.
Okay, so if you recall, the board is required statutorily every January to approve new seats. We do our best at that time to give accurate enrollment projections, but we're always trying to be a little bit conservative, not knowing what might happen second semester and summer with students and families moving in and out of the district. And so now, based upon our revised enrollment projections, we are recommending some additional seats at 4 different grade levels, at K4, 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade. This is the first time in several years that we are recommending any seats at the middle school, and the rationale for that is because of the number of students who are transferring to MG21 charter school, and that has now dipped our enrollment below our class size goals. So it's not a significant number of seats, but we do have quite a long waiting list of applications in those areas, and of course, so that still keeps us at our class size goal or below, and so that's the recommendation for the revision. You might notice, if you look at the attachment that Jared provided with the enrollment projections, the other grade where it appears that we still have room is kindergarten. The reason that we're not recommending any additional seats is we already have gone through everyone has been admitted who has applied, and there's no waiting list, so there's no need to approve additional seats.
And no one can sign up after.
Yeah, so then in the alternative piece, if someone does, we can approve those because we still have those spaces.
I'd move approval of the revised open enrollment recommendations as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
I have one question with this too. Just to reconfirm what was discussed before, what the law is, or not the law, but what we do. Yeah, it is the law, I think. That's why I'm asking this
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
When we do open enrollment, if we are, our numbers are low in a specific grade, we're obligated to fill those by open enrollment, so that we're not taking away any of these spots from Monona or Cottage Grove students, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's a
Yeah.
common
And that's why,
misperception of
Yeah.
a lot of people that I've talked to.
and,
Yes.
and that's why our policy has class size goals. It gives us a legal basis to deny open enrollment
Right.
beyond the goal.
Exactly, yeah, our class size policy is much more detailed than many districts for that very reason. Well, two reasons. One is because of the practice of what the board wants, but secondly, it's really important, as Peter said, is to be able to defend when the board, the number of seats. Because parents can appeal if they're denied, and then there has to be a justification of how we came up with the numbers.
Susan?
Well, and the law also allows you to use, I know it's building capacity, I think room capacity, and we didn't have that written into our policy, and we're using that because we just couldn't, at Glacial Drumlin, we just couldn't hold those number of kids in some of those places, the lunchroom, the gym, and some of that. And so so that is, those are factors in addition to the numbers that are in that policy. The other history piece about that is we, during the years where we had a $1 million budget decrease, where we had to decrease expenses for 3 years, we thought it was going to be 5. We increased the middle school class size. So if we ever get back into an arena where our budget will allow us to do that, I think it would behoove the board, based on the research on class size guidelines, to at least reconsider that. And that would affect, as Peter explained, your capacity for numbers of students.
I just wonder why, this is probably the second to like taxes and the facilities. This is the next thing that I talk to in my neighborhood the most about when I'm just walking around it. And there's this common misperception that with open enrollment it is, that we're taking spots away. And I'm wondering why is there still that perception of people, or is that just, do you think, is that not true for everybody, or am I just living in like a bubble where I am? I don't know.
I mean, obviously, we have to provide a space, for all our resident students.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I used to hear most often was that we were taking all these kids and that's why our buildings were crowded, and that's not true either, because we are very limited. We haven't taken anyone to high school for the last few years.
Yeah, and in a sense, that's that's the same
Okay,
thing.
so it's making it crowded for everybody.
In
Yeah.
addition, that and other things. But
Right, and I think it's just because it's hard for people to understand open enrollment, and but we haven't taken anyone at the high school. This is the first time we've taken anybody, the 5 kids. We used to take
49.
30 or so in the freshman class, and then the last few years, a couple of years we haven't, because we've had large 8th grades of our own that coming into 9th grade. So yeah, it's just a hard thing to explain. I mean, we went to those listening sessions and heard Dan explain it, and I think, and then people got it when they hear you, but not enough people come and listen and hear that whole thing. Because we worked pretty hard to make sure it was limited, with the goal and whatever we could do to not go over.
Susan?
Well, and I think some of that may come from previous boards effectively took almost all students that applied. And that has not been the policy of the board in the last, I would say, at least 10 years or so. We really use the class size guidelines. And so Dan, I was a little confused. Was my impression that we had twice as many kindergartners apply as we had positions?
4K, that was the case, not kindergarten.
You're right. Got it. So
Yeah, we still have quite a long
still have
waiting
a
list for
list.
4K.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Because you're right, I just had the wrong class. Thank you.
Any further discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, 2019-2020 non-represented support staff compensation. Susan?
I move approval of non-represented support staff compensation for 2019-2020 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, I would just comment, this is the 2.44 base wage increase, which is essentially the cost of living adjustment, which is insufficient.
Right, and I'd also like to add that we're finally up to our We don't pay less than $15
15.
per hour. We bumped up our minimum.
Mhm.
The lowest was the school nutrition assistant and so on, and I feel good about doing that, be able to do that too.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. For suggesting.
Agreed.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 2019-2020 administrators compensation. Oh,
Sorry, Susan had her hand up.
Susan.
I move approval of the 2019-2020 administrator compensation as presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Susan?
I think when we look at this, and I know Dan is going to try and get that. I know it's not easy, but having the comparables, particularly when you have a sense that maybe one of the administrators for their number of years might not be comparably equal. And I know that Jared does that, so he can probably reassure me that that's taken care of. But I think it is helpful. I'm not saying that we do the full 25, but if you do 3 major school districts that are comparable to ours, and not Oregon because they pay so much. But I mean, again, McFarland and a couple of the others, just in the ones that we might have a feel that it just looks so different from the other salaries. Just a thought. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. 2019-2020 coordinator and dean of student contracts. I have a motion to,
I'd move approval of 2019-2020 coordinator and dean of student contracts as presented.
Second.
discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Teacher and support staff.
Again, I should have,
handbook.
I didn't want to do this in the discussion, but it doesn't really fit anywhere. I don't know, but one of the things I think would be helpful for the board is to kind of, several of these positions are really new. And it might be helpful sometime, and maybe we talk about that under the meetings, upcoming meetings, but it might be helpful to just get a 2-minute update on some of the positions and how those are working, you know. Because, I mean, didn't we, one of these positions we just approved like a year ago, right?
Right, one was a revision.
But these current ones, there's nothing new.
Nothing new for this year.
Nothing new for this year,
That's why I
that's
didn't
my
really
understanding.
want to
These
bring
are
it up
just
Right.
the annual contracts for these positions.
Wanted an update on how it was going.
All right, teacher and support staff handbook revisions.
Yes.
Do you want me to start or you want
Yeah,
to
you can start.
Okay, so Susan had alluded to this in a report from Personnel Committee that a number of these came as a result of discussions directly with teachers in meet and confer sessions. And that would be really the first 4 items that are outlined were the result of that. And then the 5th item is just an update to bring the handbook into compliance with action you've already taken. You took action back in June to make some revisions to our health and dental plans, and so just update with that area. And then also there was a law change with regard to eligibility of domestic partners for insurance benefits, and so we needed to adjust the handbook to be in compliance with the law as well, and in practice, with that. So because each of those first 4 items are really kind of individual items, we're asking that the board consider each of those individually for discussion and possible approval. And so all 4 of those are recommendations from the Personnel Committee, and then
Okay.
Then
and
the
Eric-
insurance as a side.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or we could move them all at once, but.
So
but-
Eric, I'm going to let you talk about your rationale for the first one is, if you look at the language would change the handbook to say that teachers assigned to attend IEP meetings shall be paid at a rate of $16.50 per hour. And currently, under the current handbook, they're paid that amount if those meetings take place at the end of the contract, after the contracted day, with 3:30 or whatever. Well, it's different buildings. This change would say that even if they take place during the day, they would be paid that amount of money. And so I'm going to let you talk about the rationale for doing that.
Well, the rationale that I had to support this is that that time is usually most likely either going to be prep time or class time for the teachers, so it's taken away from the jobs that they're doing and time that they're putting in every day. And this would be an example of a regular teacher, which is required by law to be at an IEP meeting. So they might have a second hour prep, science teacher may have a second hour prep time, that's the only time they can do the IEP, so that they have to give up their prep time to attend the IEP meeting. So my rationale was that it was previous time that would be spent prepping for their class, or preparing for their class, or grading, or spending with their students. They wouldn't be able to do that because they have to devote that time to the IEP meeting. So that's why I was thinking that the compensation is justified. So.
Go ahead, Susan.
And I will say that I did not vote for this in the meeting because I have a different view of it. Our special ed teachers usually have a caseload of 10 or less students. And I've always felt, as a former teacher myself, that doing the IEP meetings and writing them up, it's a lot of work because they have to set them up and contact all these different people. It can be a social worker, psychologist, parents. So it is work to set it up, and then writing up the IEPs is another thing. But to me, that's part of the job of a special education teacher. And as a person who taught 8th grade social studies, if I tallied all the hours that I spent writing up tests, and it was multiple hours every time I wrote a new test, and then ran it off, stood at the copy machine, ran it off because teachers don't have clerical assistants, the many hours it spent grading the test, the essay questions, all that kind of thing, the research papers. When I look at all of that and the numbers of hours that's just one example of a classroom teacher that I know I put in addition to the school day. I just don't see this, and same thing as a classroom teacher, I occasionally had to attend an IEP meeting. So yeah, you do give up your playing time, or if it's during your class time, the district is paying for a sub to come in and take your class, so we're already spending money. So my concern is, threefold. One, I think it's part of the job of a special ed teacher. Two, I think we really need to start watching, because we've had some requests from teachers now to also pay stipends, and you're going to see another one after this, to pay stipends when there's not a sub. And to me, the answer, we keep trying to raise our teachers' salaries, and if we start siphoning off money, this is not a lot of money, so that's not really the issue with this. But if we make a practice of, it goes down a slippery slope, I think, of starting to siphon off money. It takes away from what we could potentially start trying to boost salaries a little bit and boost subpay. Subpay is a big problem. So when we have an IEP meeting during a class period, we are paying a substitute teacher to be in there. And even if it's hourly, it might be another teacher giving up their prep time, but they're at least being paid as a sub if they're doing that because they're in there for a sub. We have had a couple times this year situations where in elementary school where the principal is subbing for somebody, the assistant principal is subbing for somebody, the TOSA was subbing, and so we're out of subs. And sometimes kids had to, like if there was no sub for a classroom teacher, they'd have to go to another teacher's room. So there was a request from teachers to pay a stipend to those teachers who now had extra kids. And I just think that's the wrong way to approach it. I think we need to be finding a way to beef up our sub pool. And I worry about this because I think of all the other teachers who have meetings with parents, maybe whether it's a 504 plan or a student going on vacation, you give up your planning time to meet with the parent to go over all the materials they need for that period, or a gifted and talented person who maybe they need a special plan. So, and then our teachers have their PLC meetings, but there are always all these other meetings that come up. So I think if we start this, my concern is where does it, how many more requests are we going to get, I guess, to have meetings during the day? We already pay for required meetings outside the contract day. So just for that reason, I'm not going to support it. I didn't support it in the meeting, in the committee, and I'm not going to support it here, but it's just.
The only thing I would add to what Susan said, and I'll be just I just disagree with her.
Right, I know,
understand
yeah.
But I totally understand where you're coming from, is that we're not just talking about special ed teachers, we're talking about regular ed teachers
Sure.
too. And that other meetings, like with parents and other people, are not required by law that teachers have to attend. That there is a little bit more flexibility with some of those other meetings that they can schedule. There's very limited flexibility with IEP meetings because you're dealing with so many different people to try to get them at the same time based on usually the parent's schedule of when they can meet or the
Right.
guardian's schedule. So those are the only two things I would add to what you said.
Peter?
Let me get it straight. Was this or was it not approved by the committee?
It was approved by the committee on a 2-to-1 vote. I opposed it
Okay.
then. And so I'm just saying, I know it's a little unusual to come back
Um,
and speak against the committee recommendation.
Is there normally, does this primarily affect special ed teachers or regular ed teachers?
It's IEP the IEP team, so I would say it's all teachers. It's not specifically just special ed or regular ed.
Right, but a special ed teacher would be seeing a lot of these, correct?
Special ed teachers, if you have a caseload of 8 students, you would potentially have 8 in a year. Do you have to have them every year? But then the classroom teachers might only have 1 because they try to spread it around. You don't have the same classroom teacher doing it every time. In my whole time I was at Winnequa, I think I only did maybe 2 or 3 of them. I mean, because they it depends on who's free. They did try to do it during our planning times, or in my case, it was after school one time. And so most of them are after school, but even then, it's still time. You're trying to pack up your room, and it's always another responsibility thing you have to do. But it's
not that it ended up being. What did Jared say? $4,500.
yeah, it's not a whole lot of money.
Approximately.
Oh, I thought it was 13.
I think it's 13.
Oh, was it 13?
13,000. But as I say, and that's obviously an average because it's based on the year.
And, I do understand this. I also understand the point of wanting to raise base salaries and put more money into this case. It's in everybody in the salary schedule. They're competing points. And I do wonder why we would single out IEP meetings separately from.
Because they're a lot of work, a lot of additional work, especially scheduling them and reserving the time, because you really have to sometimes drop things that you have in order to make these meetings, I believe, possible. Otherwise, you're stuck scheduling 6 up to 10 people sometimes, to try to be at one place at one time. So.
And currently teachers are paid if the meetings are beyond their normal contract.
Right.
What percentage of IEP meetings are during the day and which are normally done in the evenings? What percentage are already paid?
You want to venture a guess, Kristen, on percentage?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. There are a lot after school. I think the secondary schools do, but we're paying the cost of the internal subs, right? So we get a sub, and you have to remember that there are IEP team members that we have on teacher contracts, like social workers, psychologists, our therapists, so it's not just the reg ed teacher and the special ed teacher. So I think the cost might be a little higher than even we estimated after giving it some thought as well. But I would say we base it on parent schedule, like Eric said. A lot are after school. We get a lot of timesheets for after 3:30 and 3:45, but at the secondary schools they make it work during the day.
Do you have any additional thoughts on this proposal?
I'll speak on behalf of administration opposes the proposal for much of the same reason that Susan mentioned.
Susan?
I know that in the committee that one of the voiced concerns was the point that was made earlier, and that is, if you pay for this, I think the advanced learner program, where right now it's difficult to ascertain. We're required by law, when students qualify in a particular arena, in one of 5 categories in a list of criteria, we're required to have a written plan for them. And it doesn't say who writes that written plan. So if in fact that were also something that the teachers had to do, then if they were being paid for IEP, it would be reasonable to also be requesting that you get paid for writing the advanced learner plan. So again, I think, which is required by law. So, I think we get into an arena that's really difficult. And if there were a way that we could say, we're gonna take that $13,000 this year and put it toward all salaries, then for me, it would be an easy question. And we are paying for the after-school. We're already doing it after your hours. So if you have prep time from 3:30 to 4:30, you're, after, that's an
If
after
there's a
school.
meeting, yeah, because that
You'll
would be
be
prep
paid
time.
for that.
Yeah, right.
IEP meeting is typically once per year per student.
Typically, yes.
It has to be done once a year.
Yeah.
It
I know it is.
There could be
more.
more if there's
Yeah.
an adjustment, but
Yeah.
usually it's
I
once
think
per
the
year.
advanced learners
right, but
required annually too.
typically
It
it's
is.
once per
The
year.
meeting is required annually,
Mhm.
that's right.
I mean, I advocated for this because I thought it was, because I personally know you're taking teachers away from the classroom with the students. And I do think it's an extra burden, a unique extra burden that's not within the constraints of job description and prep time. That's just how I feel about it. That's why I advocated to have this here, so, for discussion. So I'll be voting for this.
Well, I think one of the problems is always, all teachers have unique difficulties. I mean, they all have different things they have to do. FIAD people are usually also coaches, so they're always, I know they get paid extra, but it's still a lot of their time, in addition to their prep time and their grading and stuff. And if you teach something like English or history, social studies, you have a huge amount of paperwork, because grading 100+ research papers, essays, that kind of thing, just is an enormous amount of time. If you teach math, you're still working on it. Every teacher has, if you're an elementary person, your prep time is all chopped up. I mean, it's all, at least at the secondary level, you might have a 45, 50-minute block by the time you go to the office and come back or whatever. So everybody's got their unique burdens, I think, and it's, having been a parent, watched my kids go through and volunteered in elementary classrooms, and then also having taught middle school and high school myself, I feel like I've seen a lot of that, and I think there's no one position that's easier than the other. They all have unique burdens, and none of it can be done during the 8-hour day, which I know the public a lot of times doesn't get, but it's difficult. But I just don't see this as different from what a lot of other people do, so.
I would see, IEP meetings for special education teachers being part and parcel of the job. And I'm not sure that it's appropriate to lump them in. If someone could explain lumping all teachers, special ed teachers and regular ed teachers and everybody else who might be in the IEP together in this, to me.
Well, most special ed teachers are also teaching classes too, though. Or working with students, so.
Well, they're working with students,
Right.
yeah. But they are hired specifically to work with those students in need. These students who are in our regular classrooms for the most part. Correct?
And I think my thought as a regular ed teacher, when I was asked to attend those, was well, of course I will, because that student's in my class, it's my student.
Mhm.
So I saw that as part of my job as a regular ed teacher too. If I had to attend a meeting like that, whether it was a meeting for some other issue or, if I'm dealing with my student, of course I need to be there. And it's not even practical to have the entire teaching team be there. But so I didn't see it as different because I was a regular ed teacher. But.
Susan?
Well, and I think that goes to the question also that if you have an advanced learner and you have 2.5 gifted and talented staff, and let's say they do write the program, is an expectation of their job description, or is that considered in addition? And then, is that going to be one of the requests that personnel gets for an amendment to the handbook, and that is to pay the gifted and talented staff and all of the other teachers who write the statutorily required program for the advanced learners. I don't know.
Okay. So like everybody's giving up their opinions.
I mean, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
yeah, ready to
So
make a
I want to
motion.
hear a motion to approve the revision of the teacher handbook section 25.10 IEP meetings.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Which we just said.
Further discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Say it's passed. Aye.
Wait, I didn't.
What happened?
Okay.
Did you not vote and then you
Do a
vote?
roll call.
I didn't vote. I heard
I heard
I
two.
just said,
Roll
okay,
call
we do a
vote.
roll.
Yeah.
Roll call
We
vote.
could- Yeah.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Here, move approval of the revision of the teacher handbook section 25.195, staff subbing for co-teacher. Not all at once.
Well, so this one, let me just explain. This one is a little complicated. Our music teachers at the middle school and high school, not all our music teachers, our band and orchestra teachers, have sort of a team teaching arrangement where generally there are, and I don't know if this is always true, but I think generally there are two of them in the room at the same time. So if one of them is absent and they have a regular course load that's typical of orchestra and band students and typical in other schools too, whether they do team teaching or not. If one of the teachers is absent and they have a sub, often it's not a music sub, so when they come in they have to do something different anyway, because I think sometimes, depending on how they work at the high school, it's a bigger block time. They may break up into small sites. That's the advantage of it. That's why they like the team teaching, I think, because you have a lot of different instruments, and the teachers, that when you have two, somebody can be working with the violins and cellos, somebody else can be working with the bass, and the band, you got the tubas and the woodwinds and the different groups, and they can do that. But when they get a sub who's not a music sub, they can't do that. They have to just have the whole band together anyway, or orchestra. What they're saying, what they had asked for was to be paid, they wanted the teacher who was present to be paid a stipend for having to take the whole number of kids, where choir teachers have similar numbers and don't team teach, so they have the group by themselves already, but there aren't all those instruments. We weren't really supporting that, a lot of these discussions went on long before I got on this committee. In fact, both of these were discussed for months before I got on. But my understanding was, the committee never really reached a decision, but there was some reluctance to pay for that because it was sort of like paying because it's additional class management and it's numbers of kids. But again, it's the same number of kids that were normally there before they did the team teaching. So one board member proposed this compromise so that's what this change would be. The teachers who are scheduled to team teach will be paid the regular staff subbing rate if no sub is hired when one of the team teachers is absent, only on the second consecutive and subsequent consecutive days of this occurrence. So if one of the teachers is absent on Monday and the remaining teacher takes the whole class, they don't get the stipend. If the same thing happens Tuesday, they do. And if it happens again Wednesday, they do. After the committee approved this, and this is another one that I didn't personally support, but after the committee approved this, we had a meet and confer later where one of the music teachers said, well, this scenario really never even happened, so they didn't even think this was worth doing. Anyway, we'd already passed it, so we're bringing it forward, and I guess I'll let you see what you think. If everybody, that was clear.
Although I agree with Susan, this is the reason that this came up. I was not looking at this as just a music teacher thing. I was looking at this as any co-teaching situation for any co-teaching, any teachers that are in a class where they co-teach. And I was thinking, if we have two teachers, why do we have two teachers there then? If we have two teachers there and one of the teachers is gone and the other teacher has the same amount of students that we normally would have two teachers for, then why do we have 2 teachers? So that there should be some sort of compensation for that teacher because they're taking on extra, whether it's an extra load of students or students that might have disabilities in the class. But there's a reason that we would have 2 teachers in a co-teaching situation. So I was looking at a bigger picture and not just I know that it came up from the music
Right.
thing, but I was looking at it from any co-teaching situation from this point going forward, because we may have more co-teaching classes in the future. I don't know if we will or not, but in those situations, if we have 2 teachers in a class, there's usually a reason for it. So that's what I was thinking. And I didn't agree with the second consecutive day, but that was a compromise we made.
Right, it was a sort of compromise.
Susan?
So Susan and Eric, did they bring up the issue at all after this discussion of this particular issue about teachers, when there was no sub, and they take a classroom and divide it out into the other classes? So instead of having 24 students that day, you have 28.
They did bring that up, but that does not relate to this. That's an issue that's still, that's what I mentioned when I said we clearly need to boost our sub pay. And that's also what I said, when you start going down that slippery slope. I mean, to me, to pay a stipend it just shouldn't happen. We just have to try to make sure that doesn't happen, because it's a bigger problem than that. I think I want to get, that's not on the agenda to talk about that issue, but that's a whole different issue. It's very different than this
There was
scenario.
a day when they had
Right,
17
yeah.
teachers out, and
I don't think that was the right number, but anyway, there were a lot,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
yeah. This one, I mean, you're right, this does not apply just to music teachers, it's just they're the only ones who are in this situation right now, where they actually team teach a class. I mean, we have other people who sort of pair, but they don't, it's a different way, they aren't teaching the whole class at the same time, they're switching off.
and the administrative position on this number 2 is?
Do not support this.
Okay. Further discussion? To hear a motion to approve the revision of the teacher handbook section 25.195, staff subbing for co-teacher.
Second.
No,
I
somebody's
made-
got
I
to-
made-
Somebody's gotta move it first.
I moved to, so moved.
Mayor, second.
I have a chance for lack of a second.
All right, you second.
No, I didn't second.
Oh, you didn't.
You just have to ask one more time, you have to ask twice for a second.
Yeah. If there's no second, then it fails for
Then it
lack of a
fails for
second.
lack of- Oh, I see that.
Ah,
That's what I was just saying.
learn something new every day.
Yeah.
You know what, I'm going to second it.
Okay.
All right,
I want us to vote.
okay. And I hear a roll call vote.
No.
No roll. All in favor?
No.
All opposed?
Hey.
What are we doing?
We don't
we're not
do
doing
a
a
roll call vote, we're just doing a regular vote, so,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
so,
So I just said all in favor? All opposed?
Aye,
Aye.
nay.
Motion failed.
Yeah.
All right.
All
So it
right.
fails.
Next one, have a motion to approve the revision to the teacher handbook section 11.03, unused personal leave.
Okay, well, this one, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll talk about
it
this
now?
one. This is one that the administration does recommend as well, the personnel committee as well, is bringing this forward. We've had quite a discussion about personal leave and the history of personal leave here, like most districts, in collective bargaining back many years ago. As this was added in, it was really seen as personal business leave, where there were specific things that, occurs in teachers' lives that they really need to take off. And of course, teachers don't have vacation, they work 190 days a year, but it seems reasonable that things come up. Since that time, we've provided more flexibility, and so that it does not have to be for any specific reason, that teachers essentially can take off for any day, and they have 2 days that they can use a year. And one of the challenges is, and understandably, you get towards the end of the year and the teacher hasn't used their leave, and they're like, well, if I don't use it, I lose it. And so whether they really need it or not, they might take a day. Well, especially because of our severe sub shortage, has become even more of a hardship. And so we've thought, does it make sense to have to, number one, incentivize teachers to not use it if they don't need to? And then secondly, the idea of compensation, as much as and we've talked about in certain things, hourly pay versus salary, you can have that debate. I think that in this case, it does make sense because it is a benefit, and that you could say perhaps unfair if, that some people have this benefit and others, if they don't use it, don't get the same benefit. So we're doing this, I think, for two reasons. One, to try to be fair to teachers who don't use it, and secondly, hopefully to improve our substitute issue, that teachers will take less personal leave if they don't need to. And so the dollar amount that we're recommending, $150 per day, is comparable to what we would pay for a substitute. And so it's not really any net cost to the district. If we'd rather pay our own teachers than pay substitutes. So that's kind of the rationale.
Susan?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Section 11, the addition of Section 11 personal leave reimbursement for unused personal leave at a rate of $150 per day, which equals $20 per hour.
Second?
No further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries. Next one is, I'd like to hear a motion to approve the revision of teacher handbook definitions, teacher license.
I can speak to this.
Yeah, I'll let you speak.
This is just a clarification. One of the questions that came up during the meet and confer is regarding to teacher licensing. With the statutory change a year plus ago with lifetime licenses, in order for a teacher to obtain a lifetime license, they need to complete 6 successful semesters of teaching. And the question is, what does 6 successful semesters mean? Well, it means basically you're still employed after that time. And so that is covered in the DPI website about what those license procedures are. So we agreed it would be, for clarification, we'd put a reference to the DPI license page and that information in our handbook. And so it's just a clarification under the definition. And that's where licensing is covered in our handbook, is under the definition of teacher.
Approval of the revision of the teacher handbook definitions under teacher license.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Last motion, to approve, I'd like to hear a motion to approve the revision of teacher handbook section 17.02 dental insurance and section 17.03 health insurance, and support staff handbook section 15.02 dental insurance and section 15.03 health insurance.
So moved.
Okay, I'll second then.
I have a
Yeah.
Well, I just had a question, Dan, is on board docs, we have the health and dental is a document, is that what it is?
Yeah, so
It's part of the
one
handbook, but it's,
one attachment for the teacher handbook, the other for support staff.
Okay, got you. And there it
The
is.
second-
I just wanted to
nearly
make sure the
identical
health was in there
language.
too, okay.
I had, Peter had first and.
then I second.
Does anyone want to explain this one a little bit?
Well,
Yeah.
just for the legal change that the law, when the Supreme Court ruled that states had to permit same-sex marriage, the Wisconsin legislature passed a law saying that, well, then you don't need domestic partnerships anymore, so it's now illegal for us to cover domestic partnerships with insurance. So these two changes reflect that legislative change. And then in addition, we recently changed our health insurance plan that we approved as a board on June 12. And one of the changes was to the eligibility. So previously, both teachers and support staff were eligible for insurance, and it would be a prorated cost. But if they were 50% or above equivalency, FTE equivalency. But now with this new plan, for for support staff, they have to work at least 30 hours per week to be eligible to participate in health and dental, and for teachers, it's 80%. It used to be, well, it used to be 50, so it's 80%. So that was a change that the insurance committee agreed with and recommended, and the board has already approved it. So this is really just putting in the handbook what we've already approved, in addition to that statutory change. Does that make
Any
sense?
further-
Yeah, can you clarify the domestic partner?
Yeah, you can't legally give insurance to, they can't legally be covered by health insurance benefits anymore in the state of Wisconsin.
If
For,
they're,
s-
if
for,
they're
is that just
married?
for state employees? If they're married, they can. That's not a domestic partnership. A domestic partnership is in lieu of marriage, and that's what used to happen.
Right.
So now they're kind of
Now that you're
forcing
allowed
people
to get married.
to get married. They can't do that, yeah. It was
And the law
It was
prohibits
a-
it, so this was just changed to meet the language.
correct. Yeah, so we've been doing it, but it's just putting it in the handbook now. Yeah, it was a, yeah, whatever.
You have any further discussion? Because we've had a first and a second. Okay, all in favor?
I-
Motion carries. 2019, 2020 co-curricular and additive schedule.
Okay, so there's some information in board docs, and these are for 2 new positions proposed at Glacial Drumlin School, and really excited about, again, additional opportunities for students. The first one, the Students of Color Union, actually formed during the second semester, so we had a couple volunteer teachers that served as advisors, and in kind of concordance and a consistency with all of our other advisorships, we'd like to make these paid positions. And then the other one is a new mentoring program that we're beginning in the fall. Likewise, an advisorship that we would like to be able to make that a paid position. So if there's any specific questions on either of those programs, Principal Langer is here that can answer those as well.
Susan?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the revised 2019-2020 extracurricular and additive schedule as presented.
Second.
And that's, just to clarify, that's just with the 2 added positions, everything else is the same.
Correct.
I just wanted to be sure. Was clear.
Peter?
The co-curricular base is 36,000, has that changed?
It has not. So we've talked about at some point we probably need to,
Right, because it's not our base salary anymore.
no, it actually wasn't when we adopted this schedule either.
Yeah,
That was
never
just the
really-
number.
They had
It
this whole
wasn't when the
process.
schedule
Was.
committee first, started working on this. By the time this revised schedule was approved, it was no longer our base.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these numbers haven't changed then in general in a long time?
Correct. In
Well,
5 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion? It has been first and second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee. I would like to make a motion.
Well, there's no-
Actually, could we have some, well, yeah, I could make one. We can discuss it.
I'll make a motion for approval of the proposal for the Monona Grove Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee as presented. Let's just start there.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Susan?
Yeah, a couple of,
Can I just comment?
Oh, sure, sure,
Let me just start with this, this
Yeah.
is this proposal, I put this proposal forward after our last meeting where we had some discussion about moving forward with this, and the board voted to do so. I drafted this proposal, which is 2 things, a charge and then a discussion of sort of composition and appointments. The charge has 3 parts. One, to give, look at operations, make some recommendations relative to the, current state of the district, and then relative to the construction and renovations that we're doing on our new and existing facilities. And finally, to potentially make recommendations for long-term guidance to the board. And that would be to perhaps consider something like Madison's renewable sustainability proposal that they passed, which is that they want to go to reach a certain level of renewable energy usage by a certain date.
Susan?
Yeah, when you talked about this, I wasn't at that meeting, but I listened to that part of the meeting, and I thought, man, it sounds like, I thought it sounded like a good idea. And then I thought about it more, and my concern, well, it's not if it's a concern, but about a year ago, McKinstry did an update where they went through all of our buildings because we had some questions raised, so there's already a record of a lot of things that could be done. That's what they did before. In fact, because I never throw anything away, I got my 2 McKinstry things out from 2012. The last dates where they, if you recall, they went through and they had a whole list of stuff that we could do. And I remember asking Jared at one point when Pat Dorn was here, still here as band director, asked me about the lights in the auditorium because they were so ungodly hot. And did we ever think about replacing them? And I asked because they're so expensive to operate too. And it turned out that they have been on McKinstry's list, but what we did, if you'll recall, was pick the biggest bang for the buck. Like we bought the pool cover first, we did all that stuff where we could get the biggest payback, and then we were working our way down the list. So there was a list like that. And the third time we did a McKinstry thing, we did include those lights because it turned out when they built that new building, they brought the old lights from the old building. That's how old they were. So they now have LED lights, and they're much better, more efficient, cooler, the whole thing. So my point being that we have that material already, we've worked through it, and they have updated it a year ago, so we already have that. So I look at this first thing, and I think we don't necessarily need to do that really, because they already have a list done, so I'm not sure that I see that as necessary for the committee. And then for the second piece, I'm good with the first part of that sentence. I would put a period after existing district facilities. And then strike the rest of it, because my understanding is they've already been working on the new building. The new building is already going to do geothermal. It's already going to be structured so that we could add solar panels. They're already looking at lighting. They're already doing all of that stuff. So that's like there's no reason to have a committee look into doing more of it because it's already in there. Now, what the committee could do, however, my understanding is some of these community members particularly have expertise with getting grants for solar panels. That they certainly could do, but we don't need the second part of that sentence. And my understanding is we don't need that date because the engineering part's already been planned, but as they're building it, the solar panels could get added at a later date. So the committee wouldn't have to finish by that date. The third point, I think, is a great idea to have people have a committee look through policies and see if there's some way to write in, whether it's requirements that they be energy efficient, whatever. I don't know what policies they would be, but that's why it'd be nice to have a committee do it. So my thought was I would approve this, but I'd probably strike number 1, leave number 2 in, and just strike that last part, put a period after facility, strike the last part of that. It's a run-on sentence anyway. Well, no, it's not. If it is, I guess it isn't, but we don't need it. And then I would leave number 3. So there'd be a 1 and 2 to the charges. That was just my thought.
Well, my thoughts on that is, we actually just renewed a contract with McKinstry too. But my thought is not to duplicate any of the work here. My thought is
that was
to,
my concern.
absolutely not to duplicate any of the work. But I think what we want to do is do an evaluation and see if there's something that we could go beyond. Because where McKinstry isn't going to go is they're not going to say, well, we'd like to do X. It's going to require financing, beyond what. There's lots of models out there for things. For example, with solar, and particularly interestingly, in conjunction with PV, and I don't think that that would be within McKinstry's wheelhouse of sort of making our current things just more efficient. And this effect essentially goes to the sustainability piece, which I think we heard. Last week we heard from the community and from students about moving forward on that. I certainly would not expect, the professionals at McKinstry, I think they've done a great job and they've taken us a long way. And this is not about duplicating anything they've done. It is about going beyond that and seeing if we can come up with recommendations that not just save us, incrementally on what we've done, but make large savings in terms of our operational costs, in terms of what we're spending, so that we can take more money out of operations and spend it on teachers. I mean, ultimately, that would be my personal goal for this. But but to look at things that might go beyond what McKinstry said, which is new things rather than just refreshing what we do. Certainly, I would never expect the committee to get into anything sort of reviewing and working on the stuff that McKinstry is doing.
That's very helpful. I think the other thing that makes me think then, if we leave that in, is that I think for sure we need to get rid of that date, because that could be going on all year. I mean, that could be a longer thing. Because my other concern was, we already have Jared, who's already working a lot of extra, having these weekly meet, and Dan as well, weekly meetings on Tuesday mornings, most of the morning on the facility stuff. So they're already doing all this. He's already having meetings with McKinstry. I would hope we involve somebody from McKinstry in this, perhaps, if this committee exists too.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned with burdening Jared with another thing that's going to go on forever. And I think they should meet no more than, like all other committees, like once a month or something, because I just think, that's why I'd get rid of the date for sure. Another reason I get rid of the date for sure. I'm very concerned about adding just stuff on this. Maybe he wouldn't have to be there for some of that.
My response on that is I discussed this specifically with Jared. It's stuff he's interested in doing and working on. And, but it's also some of the scope of that. The idea is to make his job easier by bringing in,
other people.
There's always people with a lot of expertise.
Right, there are, I know
to
that.
bring them in and help us and use that expertise to get us down this path that Jared would like to get us down the path too, because the potential to save money on operations is a big deal to him.
Sure.
The reason for the deadline is that we want to make sure that if there's anything that deadline is just a goal, that if there's anything that's going to come out of recommendation of this committee, we want to make sure that they have time to build it in. If there needs to be any engineering work done in the building, they haven't.
It's already done though.
No, it's not. It's just.
Well, Dan.
The engineering work will be done by the end of the summer.
Will be done by the summer. But before this, yes, and it can be changed. But before they start construction, the reason to put
You
that
don't
in
have to
there.
have the date though, is what I was told, that the engineering is done, so some of the changes that you could make, you could still add. I mean, so what?
Well, except you can't add the cost of adding solar panels, for example, to the
It's going to
roof.
be designed to accommodate them. We just can't pay for them yet.
Right.
If you guys get grants.
That's right. If that has been sized appropriately, I mean, the electrical has to support that. And so the goal would be to make sure that the goal is there, and that's just a goal. It is nothing hard and fast. But the idea is that if there's anything big that this committee thinks that they can do to make sure that we have a recommendation this winter, so that if we need to change anything that goes on with the construction, that they have time to do that. That's the only reason for that goal. And again, it's just a goal. If we're satisfied that we don't need to do that, the idea would be that to look at the recommendations that are coming out of this and say, well, have you thought about this? And maybe we'd like to make sure that the new facilities, new construction can support anything that's recommended. That's all.
Well, listening to you have this discussion, I'm looking for middle of the road, because I think we just need to move forward, and I understand both positions. If we take the date out and instead put prior to a date to be determined by the Director of Business Services, then that validates that it is in fact Jared, and it validates that he can move that if he felt compelled to do so. And it still fits with what you've already done, because you said he's going to set the date. So at least it's something to think about. The other thing is, I would leave number 1 in, and the reason I would leave number 1 in is that one of the things that was challenging for the Equity Committee was to get the material to them in a timely way. And this had nothing to do with the chairman. This had to do with just gathering the staff to help you get that information. Find out where we are today and what we were.
I don't think it was that challenging.
What we were currently doing.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that challenging. I mean, it was work, but I mean, Dan put together a lot of the
Okay,
This
information.
isn't about an argument. What I'm saying is it was like, it's my impression it was the May or June meeting before the data came forward to the committee. But one of the things that's helpful as the committee starts is to know where we are today. And if you're going to involve community members, they may not be aware of that. So if you start out with, You need to know where we are today. So you have McKinstry come in and do a presentation on where we are today. The first meeting, where we are today. Facilities, that group struggled with where are we on our athletic stuff. And that, again, you start with that first. That's continuous improvement. Where are we today? What do we need to do to make it better? You come to the middle of the road and you have that date set by the Director of Business Services, and we all agree that the policies are a good idea. And then did you want to add language about
do you want-
grades?
No,
Was that?
well, all I was gonna do then, I don't mind putting in, because as you say, it's a goal, it doesn't have to be done by then, and
Okay.
I don't think it hurts
Okay.
anything to leave it in
Pull
there.
it up.
So then I only have a couple of clerical things, which is in the first sentence, then if we're gonna leave that in there, the word board should be capitalized, because it's our board. And then if you go down to your composition and appointments, sorry.
Social
No,
studies. Former social
I
studies.
grade a lot of grammar, right? Social studies.
She's been
I'm
doing
picky about it.
policy.
I fight with Susan all the time about the Oxford comma.
Okay.
So,
Which
okay,
I
under,
use.
I use it too, and we all should use it.
Yeah.
Under composition and appointments, the third line, I would put a period after the word students, and then make the non-resident be a capital N, because it starts a new sentence. It's a run-on.
I'm
otherwise.
fine with that.
And then in the next line, appointments of board members probably should be capitalized because it's our board, but then board president, I capitalize the B again, that's all.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm fine with it, I think it's a good idea, it sounds good, and I appreciate that you followed the committee
Yeah.
creation format from the policy, so that's all
Right.
good. Pretty easy.
Actually, I had a comment. I mean, what is unusual is that there is a provision in the charge, and no one ain't mine. This is not something that I anticipate coming up, but I did leave a provision for it, which is normally the committee members from the school, community and our local community. There is a provision in there that allows non-residents, if I have somebody who's very interested, who has the right expertise, but would be right who's not a resident, there is a provision in that. I don't anticipate using it.
We did have a person who was emailing us who worked with solar, but I don't know if he was
Yeah,
a resident.
right.
So it's
Yeah.
possible, yeah.
Yeah, it's
You've had a
possible.
non-resident on committees before.
I just wanted to,
Yeah.
He's from Madison.
Honorable child.
just make that provision. It's been
Well,
moved and seconded.
Yeah, it's been motion and second, and I just want to add, make sure we get the incoming freshman on this committee. Because she was really heartfelt. She
Oh, the
spoke her
person who
mind.
spoke,
Yeah.
right.
She- I want to see this,
I
want to see this committee start and go with her on it too.
Yeah, one of the cool, I'm sorry. One of the cool things that we did before we worked with McKinstry, and it was because we had a teacher at the high school who was interested too, they had an educational piece, and they actually had a McKinstry person they had a committee that they worked with at the high school.
That's right.
And the McKinstry person came and met with the students, it was pretty cool, but it was, that teacher then, retired, that was the end of that.
retired.
But that might be an outgrowth of this too, but I agree with you, it'd be nice to have her asked.
My comment is when the formation of the community got torn between making it, there's a lot of interested stakeholders.
Yeah.
But as the community gets too large, it's hard to get work done, and I think we need to get some work.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
we want to get work
Yeah.
done, so, I'll try to be, well, not,
Invitation.
but we should try and be as inclusive as possible, but we gotta be careful about not making it too
Right.
big.
Right.
Okay, so it's been first, it's been second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. All right, moving down to discussion items. We were policy revisions, the first reading.
Wow, there's a lot of these.
Yeah, there are a ton of them. This is just first reading, so. Susan,
With
Or do they miss?
Oh, Jonathan.
Alright,
Yes.
are these all in the overall recommendations? Okay,
They are, so,
that means we gotta read it more carefully.
No, we've already done that painfully, so.
so just to point out, they're
Some
from
of the
either,
recommendations were inaccurate and we fixed
We
those.
we fixed,
We're ready to send them a bill.
So they are from the volume 28, number 1, and special school safety update, which you all do have access to. So if you want to see the Neola rationale and the templates, that all is in there.
Okay.
I have all the policies right here with all our notes on it. If anybody would like to see those.
So that,
It's probably
I'll just one
25 hours.
clarification. This update came out in January. And I think the committee started working on it March or April, well, at least by that time. So it's been quite a lot of work.
Okay.
It's nothing earth-shaking in there, but.
Susan, you've gone through all these?
Oh, yeah.
Anything of particular
Oh,
concern?
we both have, not only, we've gone through all of these twice, a minimum of twice.
And we have made changes, we've sent them back, Dan, to
So-
have legal
Well,
advice.
Yeah, just to remind everyone of the process. So when we
Yeah.
get the Neola updates, we have a Neola representative
Yeah.
that first meets with me. We go through them, he
Yeah.
explains, here's the rationale,
Yeah.
and so on. And then we together say, okay, here's the ones that I think we should consider. We don't accept all the Neola changes. And then from there, we take it to the committee. They go through them all. I explain, here's my rationale, and there are quite a few changes that are made at
Sure.
the committee level as well.
I just want to make sure Susan Manning went through them and looked out for the district's best interest compared to Neola.
Yeah.
Because I trust that you.
I agree,
do that.
and,
Yes.
and I appreciate that point, because Dan, he's smiling, but that's because a couple times, so two, we found incorrect statutory references or language that wasn't accurate. So there were a couple times we came into the meeting and we'd gotten through 10 policies, we got to the next one, and we hadn't had time to research the law on it, even if the law wasn't the reason they were changing it. We just stopped and met and came back again. We had every one of the reference statute as well as anything that statute that related to that policy. And we also looked at our old policy to see if there were things in it that, and then we looked at additional similar policies. So we always referenced the Neola policy, our old policy, similar policies from other districts, and we double checked the statute.
Okay.
And made Neola corrections.
I'll just add as well, there are at times where we'll consult with our attorney from Boardman and Clark as well on
That's
those.
right.
And he has a
At least twice.
relationship with Neola, so that if he recommends changes to Neola's work, he'll also contact them directly and point out why he,
Okay.
thinks and they've made changes based upon that several times in the past.
Okay.
Policy 8330,
Which one?
which is the student records. Is it the statute that requires transfer student records no later than the next working day?
That is
That
correct.
seems like a lot of.
There
a
are many
pain.
districts that don't follow it, but that is the statute.
The law statute says the next working day.
Yeah.
All right.
So that comes through Krista's department, and we have a district right next door that does not meet that timeline.
Well, it's a tough. I
It's a
imagine
tough
it would
timeline.
be
No, we
a
meet it.
quite demanding timeline.
Well, we do it.
Well, I understand why somebody wouldn't.
So that's just on this discussion item, so.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we'll move on to the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee recommendations.
And I want to point out that there was a little, a mix-up with this final report. I would like Susan Fox to, if you could send me again I
Oh.
know you did some revisions, but we didn't get those because there was, you emailed them, we had that
Yeah, I
problem with
thought-
email.
I thought this was.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
So I would just say, first of all, we may submit an additional final report with some grammar and some revisions. Very basic though, nothing significant, so, I don't know, Susan, I just like if you'd look, just.
Yeah,
look this over
I
when you
will
get
look
a
at it again, but
chance.
I thought that this
I'm
was.
pretty sure this is not the same one that you and I were talking about, so.
Okay.
I know there's
Why
some
not?
capitalization things.
Why don't you check on that and then we as a board
Yeah,
can
we
accept it at our next meeting?
But in
Yeah.
regards to the report is the same, and the
Right.
recommendations are the same. there's nothing that would change with those. And, you know, I would like the board to review this, and I'd like to consider this for an action item at the next board meeting for the recommendations that we have from the Teaching Learning Equity Committee. And at the same time, I'd also like us to consider the recommendations from the Alma report, as well, as that's one of our recommendations that we consider the Alma report. And now that we have that, I think we should seriously consider some of those. And I know, Dan, that they're regarding the Alma report and maybe even these 4 recommendations, it would be helpful to know if there would be any costs related to these. Is there a way that we can maybe get the information for that? I don't see cost on most of them, but with the Alma report, there may be some costs related to that.
Yeah, and I don't know, we're scheduling a conference call next week with them as a follow-up, and that'll be part of the conversation about what that follow-up support might look like from them. So we don't have a proposal at this point. I would expect within the next month that we will.
Well, and I'm also thinking about costs related to such things such as like recruiting, some of the recommendations for recruiting, those two. To have what those numbers would be helpful if we can get some sort of estimate, you know. And it might not be none, or it might not be any, excuse me, it might not be any. But, you know, it's hard to know because I don't know the details of HR and the district of what that would entail for us doing that we're not already doing, so.
And the only other thing, you know, one of their recommendations, and this is where we might have changed it, I have to go back and look, but where it says make the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee a standing committee, which I think it was unanimous that we wanted to do that, but a number of committee members also wanted the primary focus to be on equitable opportunities for all students. And there was really an emphasis on racial equity is what they were talking about mostly. And then the idea of exploring subcommittees. And I just think that's a recommendation people should be thinking about. I'm not sure what I think about narrowing it, just because when we created it, I mean, we created it pretty broadly so that we could, that committee could also hear concerns about gifted and talented, for example, or find out more information about reading, about how it's being taught. We kind of thought this committee could do all of that. And my concern is if we start funneling off to too many subcommittees, I mean, maybe we could do that, but every subcommittee, because it's board created, has to be noticed, has to have a staff member, it gets much more. And so I think the truth is that a lot of the community members who joined this committee joined it with the racial equity piece as their main focus. So that's what it's been. I think we needed to have that focus, and we need to not lose sight of that focus. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm not sure how to handle that piece, because I kind of wanted to keep the committee with a broader purpose, and yet still, I don't know, still have part of every meeting maybe be on it, or it might be every other meeting, or I just want us to have room for the other stuff. That's my concern. So just as something to think about between now and.
And I agree with Susan that I think we can accomplish more with a committee with a broader purpose. And I know there was a concern of some of the committee members to just keep focusing on equity and race, but I think the TLE committee can do that, and at the same time look at some of the other areas of equity in the district for gifted and talented students, students with disabilities, and things like that.
Right.
And I think we could accomplish more as a committee if we don't have subcommittees, because I think then we would break up, we'd be breaking things up. So I agree with you.
So it might be a matter of, it's possible that some of the original members might choose to not continue, or they might want to.
Sure,
but
and we can.
we could maybe add some people. I mean, that's all, for a future conversation, but I just think we
So
should.
I do have a question, kind of procedurally. So next month, we will have it as a possible action item for the board to accept the recommendations from the committee. Now, one of those recommendations is to make the committee a standing committee. So if you accept that recommendation, okay, I guess you've taken action to make it a standing committee, but then the question is, the charge of that ad hoc, is that going to be the same charge of the standing committee, or how do you want to go about possible revisions for that? Do you want to put that as a separate possible action item or discussion item for this board
Well,
to?
if we, I mean, I would have I would have one item for the TLE committee, and in it, we would consider making it a standing committee, and we could also consider the charge. And I would encourage the current chair to
Right.
review the charge, and other board members to look at the charge and think about and make recommendations to Eric about any changes that he might want to bring forward.
Susan.
Yeah, and I just want to point out the current charge is right here. It's the top of the report, so we can look at it, and it is quite broad, and I don't know that I would change it, but I'll think about it. I mean, I'd think about it too.
just think
So-
I guess I would ask I will work with Susan to have a new charge of the TLE committee. It might be the same. If anybody else has any suggestions of what that charge would be, I'd ask you to email me and let me know what they are.
Yeah, and I think procedurally, I mean, we could just accept the report, and then that doesn't necessarily mean we're agreeing with 100% of every single piece of every recommendation. I mean, you don't even need an action to accept the report.
That's separate from,
So
that's
it's
just
separate
a
action.
report.
Right, it's just a
To create the
report,
committee.
and then any action would require separate things anyway, because some of these don't require a motion. Well, they, well, it says we should adopt an equity policy. We had talked about that also. We had talked about maybe that committee working on one and bringing it to policy, then bringing it to the board. I mean, that's something we've been wanting to do in policy anyway, and we just haven't gotten to it. So I don't know if that needs, I think that'll happen. I don't know if it even needs a board action, but, and the other stuff, I'm not sure what board action would mean for these. I mean, they're good recommendations. I sort of feel like we'll do them if we accept the report, but anyway.
Well, and Eric, would you and Susan and Andrew bring a recommendation to the board in terms of what you'd like to do with the membership?
Sure.
I know when the Community Engagement Committee changed, they basically, I think, made everybody reapply, and there were some people that were on it that reapplied that didn't get on and weren't very happy about that.
Sure.
I know that there are several people that applied that still are very interested in the committee.
Sure.
So again, and it would be helpful, I think, to the board to have a thought about how you want to put that package together
Sure.
ongoing.
Yeah, I can do that.
I don't know the answer.
Yep. All right, moving right along.
Great committee, great meetings.
Facilities plan and update.
Okay, so the actual written update's pretty short, not a whole lot has happened. We did take a kind of a 2-week break from our core team meetings over the end of June and the 4th of July week. We did meet yesterday, so just again, I think everyone knows this tonight, Jared again is at the Plan Commission, so the site plan is attached to here, as well as the updated traffic study. And what we're looking for tonight is for the Plan Commission from Village of Cottage Grove to approve that site plan, which will move it on to the village board. And the administrative recommendation going into the meeting was to approve it with some conditions. The conditions we found acceptable. And then if that's the case, the next village board meeting is next Monday the 15th. And so I would attend that with Jared. Perfect world, it gets approved then. And then the next key piece is that developers agreement. And that's where we would make sure we had legal representation with us as we develop that about expectations with things like who pays for what with road improvements and that sort of thing. And so we've consulted with legal counsel already, as well as with the village, to make sure we're clear about those timelines. And they said, yeah, that will start then after this, and it'll be several months, before that would be completed. So, so far so good on that end of it. Any questions on that part? Okay, then as far as, oh,
Well,
please.
maybe I should ask this now, I'm not sure. One of the things that was suggested in a board, that was discussed, not suggested necessarily, in a board discussion, was a board liaison to those meetings, so that there would be somebody kind of there that was not, like a board liaison to the teacher mentoring and a board liaison to the Monona Grove Education Foundation. You don't really do anything, but you sit there and listen, and then you can, if a board member has questions, you have another person to ask. I don't know how the board feels about that. Do we want to have that discussion at another time? Maybe what we should do is have you and Dan talk about it and see how I feel about it.
So,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't feel the need for that, because I feel like the information we get is sufficient, and I don't, and I know they meet a lot. I mean, and I don't feel the need for it. I think it's,
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, it was a
Personally, but-
discussion.
And
right, so you guys.
I'd
can
like
talk
to,
about it.
yeah, I would, you know, I don't know, I think the board should be a little more close. I don't feel as close to this as the last time we built the school. And there might be some discussion.
You guys can talk about it.
so,
and see
yeah,
what you
we'll
think.
talk about it.
And I've got an issue right now.
Okay, well, let me just piggyback off that as far as, I'll update you a little bit about what we talked about at yesterday morning's meeting. And so we had all of our consultants from Ring and Do, which were doing the HVAC work and plumbing in particular, and we were focusing on Winnequa School. And so we know that we had the walkthrough and the identification of the need to update from the facilities plan, you know, from 3-4 years ago. Well, now we're getting into the actual engineering about what has to be done and exactly what type of replacement there will be for the HVAC system and so on. And really the report is that school is in tough shape, to use a non-technical term. We already knew about the pipe, the plumbing, the original galvanized piping. We've seen that. The good news is that right now that's all under in tunnels and not very accessible, and so the replacement will be all above and accessible and so on, and that those tunnels will be able to be abandoned completely, so nothing in there. So that's a good thing.
How much storage is in?
Tornado shelter, we use it as.
Great.
But then the HVAC system, we knew the plan was likely to eliminate the unit vents, go to the AV system, but the actual chillers and you know, that right now are outside that are on the ground as well need to be replaced. And the recommendation would be rooftop chillers, but several smaller ones versus, you know, one, you know, large one. And so there's a lot more, you know, technical stuff that they're into that design piece right now. The good news is, even though they found it, we're still within the scope of our budget. We also made a decision that while they're in with all the duct work above ceiling, a number of the ceiling tiles are going to have to be replaced anyway. We talk about energy efficiency. We decided we are going to replace all the lighting in all the classrooms as well. That was not part of the original scope, but thought while we're in there, you know, that it makes sense to do that now. And there were some savings in some other areas that, again, at this point, we'll make sure we stay within the budget. But we determined, to recall, as part of the Facilities Advisory Committee with the referendum, that the number one priority budget-wise was the new school, number two, the capital maintenance items, which this would be, and then whatever monies would be left over would be for classroom renovations. And so that's the approach that we're taking as far as, you know, the design that you've seen for renovating some of the Cottage Grove classrooms. So Winnequa is, you know, that, you know, there's a lot of money going into Winnequa. So we'll, at the next formal update, we'll have this in writing for you and more specifics about what this means. All in all, I thought it was a really positive thing that it really is going to have more enhanced improvements at Winnequa.
Do we know any more about the water leakage part? Is that, I mean, I guess I thought there was something new about that too. Or
I mean, that is,
that
eventually last week, or the week before, they did more borings to try to determine exactly what does exist underneath. There was work done about 10 years ago that supposedly drain tiles were put in at that time. They had difficulty finding these or wondering, did it really happen? But it's a complex issue. But so the final solution is not in place yet. They are confident, though. They've got things narrowed down about how to best approach it, and so I think within this next week or two they'll have that, and so yes, it will still get fixed this summer, I guess.
it
is the
will,
bottom line.
okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was hoping. But,
Yeah.
so but it might be more, like, more intense,
Yeah, I mean,
bigger
they-
project than we thought.
Well,
It's
not necessarily
very
bigger,
nice.
they're just trying to get the
Okay,
right
the right
thing,
thing,
to make sure
right.
that it's really effective.
Okay.
You know, so I know I am confident saying that part of the solution is, you know, more drain tile around the outside or the edge of the building. And what they found is right now where all that water goes from the roofs and so on, it does not get far enough away from the building. So it gets into that, you know, courtyard area,
Right.
it's coming right back.
Right
Yeah.
back into the building.
So that's part of the solution as well, is making sure that the water gets away from the building.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
And when will MG21?
okay, thank you for bringing that up. So actually this afternoon, had a walkthrough with a couple of folks from the MG21 governance board, just to show them where we're at. At this point, they're about 90% done with the demolition work, and then they'll be starting to put up, you know, the new walls and so on in the office. So we would like to schedule a time for our board members to take a walk through. And so actually what we'd like to do is at about the end of July or first week of August. And so we can talk about it now, we can confirm through email about availability, but we're looking, if we stick with our typical Wednesday nights, possibly July 31st or August 7th. And what we'd like to do is have it as, we'll notice it obviously with all the board members there, have the folks from EOA and Findorf talk a little bit again about where we're at, and then actually take a walk through. Not only so you can see what's going on with MG21, but it'll be a good indicator of this process on the renovations of the existing schools that are going to happen next year on a much larger scale, obviously. So, initial thoughts about
Either
I mean,
one.
either of those two Wednesdays.
Either one works for me.
I'm sorry, which ones?
Both are fine.
July 31st or August 7th.
Any chance we can do it on a Tuesday?
So did you just do that? Who cannot go on the 31st? Peter?
Mhm.
Who cannot go on the 7th?
Seventh is difficult, I have to rearrange some other things.
So are we doing it on the 7th?
Is there another?
I can send out a,
Yeah.
If we
I
if we
prefer
move it to-
Tuesday the
if we-
6th or
If
the
we move it
30th.
Tuesday, I'd prefer the 6th to the 30th, but if we switch it to Tuesday,
Okay.
that works.
August 6th.
Should we shoot for either the 6th or the 7th, and we'll
Yeah.
confirm with
what
the board
time are you,
members?
it would just be?
Whatever the earliest that you all could be there.
Yeah, so the 6th, I could not do it early. I'd do it early, like 8 a.m. But, not that said,
So
on
I'm
the
thinking-
7th, I could do it, I couldn't do it till after 4 p.m., so
So what, the like
I
5?
can do it during the day on the 6th.
I could do it during the day on the 6th, but I'd have to be done by 9, so.
We typically do things at 6 at the earliest. If you could make it
Yeah,
at 5, that would be
5,
great.
yeah.
Okay, so who can go at 5 o'clock on the 6th?
5 a.m.?
Did you say
5
5 a.m.? Oh, 5 p.m.
That was Eric.
PM is good.
2 p.m.
5 p.m. on
I thought you
Tuesday.
said
The
5
6th.
a.m.
Oh,
The
some people are
6th.
up at 5 a.m. You know.
I can do that.
Some of us are.
Okay, so
5
tentatively
p.m.
Tuesday, August 6th at 5 p.m. We'll
Yeah.
confirm.
Okay.
Tuesday, August 6th, 5 p.m. Good.
All right.
5 a.m.
All right.
See, Joyce, it's not a lot easier than 15. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any more updates on the facilities plan?
That's all I have, and then, other than we'll then shortly after that point determine when the next workshop that we'll have, where we'll bring them in. And I think the next one will be really talking more about that design process and what those consultants are doing and how that all works and the timing.
If you open up the civil drawings, air photo, property owner list, zoning map, et cetera, PDF, and look at page 5, you'll see a roadmap of the site. And what concerns me is this interface here where after you drop off kids at the school, in order to get to Glacial Drumlin, which I think a lot of people will be doing, you would
Yeah.
make a left turn across the incoming traffic.
Where are you talking? Oh, right. Is that what you're talking about?
Right, this intersection right here. And Not only that, but that's going to back, the left turns will get delayed, it's going to back up traffic, people dropping off. Plus, there's this, additional, there'll be a lot of left turns, I think, across the incoming traffic, and I'm a little concerned about that. If you ask me, a far superior thing to do would be to just make the right turn lane on Bus Road, widen that all the way up here, get rid of this road, and let people, if they want to go to Glacial Drumlin, turn right again, and go out to Glacial Drumlin. Because I see that left turn, I think, is going to be, I think what goes on at the high school, and I think that left turn is going to be a problem. You're going to have a lot of people dropping off a kid here, and then going to Glacial Drumlin and turning left across the traffic. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I know you're probably sound in what you're saying, but.
Yeah. And I would rather just have you go in and out and make right turns and then go over to Glacial. Get rid of that, and then you make a couple right turns and go over to Glacial Drumlin.
So how would somebody get there coming from the left?
What do you mean coming from the left?
Well, how would they
They
have to turn up here,
what's that?
go
Yeah.
around,
Mm-hmm.
like that?
No. If you're coming from the left, you could turn in. You could make the left turn here, go in, drop off, and take a right turn and go this way. Most of the traffic is going to come this way on Bus Road. People are going to be turning in here, and then immediately after turn in, there's going to be left turns in front of them, crossing in front of them, just after they made the right turn.
If you come in at Glacial Drumlin, do you
Drop off at Glacial Drumlin
right-hand
first.
turn all the way?
Yes, if you drop them off at Glacial Drumlin first.
Oh, so there's no problem. I mean,
Well,
what
there
I'm
is a
saying
problem
is,
because
like right now with Dean, with Bridge Road closed, you're doing a workaround.
Mhm.
And one of them is you come back around and do that right-hand turn. If in fact
Our elementary schools, let's see.
you...
I just see that's, and
It's a
we're not going to
potential for a
enforce people.
problem.
We're not going to enforce people dropping off at Glacial Drumlin first. So
Yeah, we can't, there's no way to do that. Yeah, if we do that, there's not a problem.
And
I
what if
suppose we
the
could put
start
a
times are
no left
different?
turn into that, but I don't know.
well, I don't know if you do that. Just don't make the intersection. Get rid of this road section and let people go right around Glacial Drumlin. It just seems to me that there's an easy solution that involves less pavement and no left turn. So I drop off here.
Get rid of that road, so the only way they can go is the.
And I would just make a wider full-length right turn lane on Bus Road. You go there, and you go around the back to Glacial Drumlin if that's what you're gonna do. The biggest problem I see is that left turn is gonna back up, and it's gonna back up into
Yep.
the drop-off zone.
I agree.
There's gonna be two then.
Actually, that we're not concerned about. The queuing
Yeah.
is twice as large at any of our existing schools. So there's space for 50 cars to be queued around that corner for the drop-off.
Mhm.
And that was a big part. Reed Foster, of course, who has spent time at Glacial Drumlin at Cottage Grove School, is as expert as we have about how the parking works and
Mhm.
directing traffic, and so he's been integrally involved in this design. And so the idea is that, no, there is enough queuing space that they will not be backed up beyond that road.
No, I'm saying when you go to turn left, what's gonna happen is that if as soon as three cars
Cars
He's
pulling
right.
in.
there's a continuous stream
that
of
would
cars
assume-
coming in, I can't turn left, so I'm sitting there and then the left turns back
The
up.
queue stops, yeah.
And you're
that
gonna
stops
end
the
up
queue.
putting up a three-way stop, and then everybody stops, and then
But
everybody...
it assumes you're gonna have more than 50 cars in
It has to
that
be,
queue. I mean,
it
you're
has
gonna
to be a
have
stop
like-
sign there anyway.
I mean, it assumes you're gonna have more than 50 cars going around that queue, if the queue holds 50.
No, it's
It
good.
assumes-
No, it means that just a certain number, more than a few are coming out at a time. I want to make a left turn. That's all.
Right,
It-
but that
it's
might
like-
not be a problem, is what I'm saying. If it'll hold 50 in that loop.
Yeah, but then everybody's waiting.
But then
Right, they're waiting
once
a
you're
little
done,
longer,
you're gonna move out. I
My
think that's-
point is you can't move out. If that left turn backs up,
That's right.
you might have trouble moving out.
That's right.
That's where you
So
get in trouble.
I think it's worthwhile to take
Take a
that
look
back
at it.
to the designers and ask them to think about how to solve
I'll
that
point out
problem.
the concern.
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
I'm not convinced it's a problem, but I'll point out the concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've spent hours and hours
They
and
have spent
hours
a
and
lot of
hours on
time.
this design.
I know that. How many of those people have little kids that they drive to school every day? That's the question.
Well, they do design this.
I just think that
Yeah.
you know, I have the experience in the high school parking lot, and I see this left turn here, where there's there's sort of some equivalence, and I see this left turn here, and
You see other thing.
that's a problem.
If you drive in that community frequently, and now you do, you're gonna see backups on Bus Road coming out onto Cottage Grove Road. You're gonna see backups at
I don't think
Vilas
that's true.
that are,
I
Well,
don't
that's
see
what-
that.
Well, as I said, we've paid over $30,000 for a traffic study.
Yep.
Okay, we have all the data. I will bring back the concern. It will
okay,
be discussed.
That's what I wanted.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, I appreciate that. I just think that there's an easier solution that I think is less problem.
Just let them
and they
bring
may,
that.
the way they do the study, they may be able to show us. They may be able to put this live, put cars on there and show us that.
Let's let Dan bring that up there, and let's keep moving. We can let him handle that and bring it back to us with some data. All right, future meeting dates. Any questions?
Do we, Dan, have we scheduled,
Policies on the 31st.
time to go over the data that's
We have not yet.
gonna come back? Do we know, I was thinking that was August or September.
Correct.
So it might be helpful to be looking at an additional workshop in August.
Mhm.
And right now, we only have one meeting scheduled for that month. So that gives us, what, 3 other Wednesdays? But people will be vacationing and stuff, so I think we need to do that
August
soon.
tends to be,
Yeah, if you think about having staff here, August, I don't know if that's a great, well, they have to be back by toward the end, I guess, so.
Well, I mean, Dan,
I'll be gone from August,
do you want to do it in September?
well, I'm gone August 14th to the 26th.
To the end?
26th we start
Okay.
school, so.
That is what we're trying to do, vacations and
I mean, I'll be here for the 14th, we have that meeting on the 14th, but after that I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm just
The
wondering.
7th is too early, I think.
Well, not sure.
Yeah, check, because that's when some of the staff would want their, I don't know what their plans are. Yeah. I would like to not. do it.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to wait a little bit, have a little more time.
I'd like to not do it the first week in September, bring it to September.
Well, we have the annual meeting, right?
Yeah,
Right, that's the
Yeah.
night.
So I think,
we have the annual meeting, the board meeting.
That's a Monday,
and
though.
the
Yeah.
Diversity Forum, Dan.
What day is the board meeting in September? Do you have that? Is that
The 10th?
10th or the 11th?
Of September,
Yeah.
but,
sorry, we'll have 3 nights in a row.
yeah,
Oh, we
I'm
have-
just
oh, we have
saying,
board meetings two.
you need
Three
to
nights in a row.
seriously not think about the 9th, 10th, or the 11th.
Right.
Right.
So we have 2 board meetings already, the 10th and the 11th?
No, it's an event.
Yeah.
The 11th, we,
The 11th.
maybe we should add that next time as a,
Oh.
so I would
Oh, I
say
see, it's right
then,
here in front of me, Duh, sorry. If I look at my,
yeah.
So I'm guessing you don't want to do it the week of Labor Day, but that leaves you kind of to look at the 4th and the 18th.
Right, I would say September 18th or 25th would,
possible, yeah.
Do we want to just put the 18th down for a possible board workshop? Okay. Remember, when we did that before, we needed 2 meetings.
well,
Let's just see how this gets.
You know, you might structure it differently, but
we're gonna try based upon feedback from previous meetings.
okay.
Okay, we all good? All right, I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?